What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Young Guns podcast. Guys, we have to talk about this. What the heck is going on with the St. Louis Blues? They are currently ranked 31, okay, in the overall standings in the NHL. Right above the Columbus Blue Jackets, who haven't been impressive as well. We spoke about them in the past episode, speaking about Johnny Goudreau, so you guys can check that video out. But why is it that in 11 games, this team is 3-8-0, totaling for 6 points? Yes, they are facing the San Jose Sharks tonight, but the problem is that we all know Eric Carlson's really high, so maybe San Jose Sharks could surprise people and beat the Blue Jackets, right? Sorry, the Blues. Oh my God, yeah, so they could beat the Blues. So, but what happens if the St. Louis Blues do not win and they lose 9 in a row? Because currently they're at an 8-game losing streak.
Yeah.
Ryan O'Reilly called his own play out recently, saying that he's been absolutely horrible. And then in terms of Doug Armstrong, he was ready to blow up the team in 2019 before they went on a run and won the Stanley Cup. So my guess here is that he's not afraid to do it this time for real. So
Well,
today, guys, we're going to be talking about what will happen with the St. Louis Blues. So Luca, start us off.
well, one thing that we got to look at with the St. Louis Blues is listen, this was a team that last year was one of the best teams in the NHL. And I don't know or understand kind of how they just fell off, but there's a lot of guys that are really underperforming. You mentioned Ryan O'Reilly. He's only got 2 points in 11 games. He's been awful. But not only that, Jordan Kyrou, who they signed to a contract extension this season, he's got 4 points. And they signed him to $8.1 million starting next season, and he's only got 4 points. He's a minus 17. This is a team that has not scored goals. They haven't put the puck in the back of the net, and they haven't been able to win games. And I know that people are going to look at this and blame goaltending and say that Binnington and Greiss haven't been good, and you're right about that. Thomas Greiss and Jordan Binnington haven't been good. But this goes far beyond that. This is a team that is not scoring goals. And when your two leading players are Braden Shen and Justin Falks with 3 goals, 7 assists each, and 10 points, that's not a good sign. Vladimir Tarasenko's got 9 points in 11 games as well. This is a team that is struggling to find secondary scoring, and also a team that is struggling to win games. We don't really know why that's the situation. We know Buchnevich was out for a little bit, is out for a little bit as well. Only played 6 games this season, but they haven't been good, and we don't know what the situation is here. But if this continues for St. Louis moving forward, they may have no choice but to blow it up because
And look,
this is getting ridiculous.
yeah, it's honestly unacceptable. And you look at the standings right now, Justin Falk is leading with 10 points in 11
Yeah.
games. Sure, he's a very underrated and serviceable defenseman, but do you really want that guy to have the most points on your team? It should be a guy like Jordan Kyrou, for example, or Ryan O'Reilly. Not even, Torrey Krug, who's supposed to be their best defenseman. He's getting paid the most money. He only has 5 points in 11 games, and it hasn't been working out for him since going to St. Louis. He hasn't been the same player he was when he was with the Boston Bruins. We don't know what's really going on there, but Robert Thompson, who's really
Robert Thompson.
electrifying last year, he's doing okay. Barbashev, who had a good season last year, he's doing okay. Kyrou,
Not really.
under the expectations, falling, lower and lower as like everyone else gets more points, and he's just not doing really much, especially once you get that contract, you're supposed to be living up to that contract. And right now he's not. People were worried about Suzuki and Tage Thompson and so on and so forth. They're like, oh my God, these contracts are crazy. They're not going to live up to it. Those players have been living up to those contracts, but in terms of Kyrou, he hasn't. So he needs to be better. The whole team needs to be better in general, or else
And
changes will be made.
I think what's interesting too is look, they started off the year, they beat Columbus 5-2, they beat Seattle in overtime 4-3, and then they got a shutout against the Oilers. And it was like, oh my God, okay, St. Louis is starting off really well. Then they lose 4-0 to the Jets and 3-1 to the Oilers, 6-2 to Nashville. And then I think ever since that 6-2 loss to Nashville, it's been a shit show for St. Louis because 6 goals, 7 goals, 5 goals, 5 goals, 3 goals, 5 goals. That's how many goals they've let in each of those games, which means that since the Nashville game, they've let in 3 or more goals in every single one of them. right? They let in 7 against the Canadiens, which is the most they've let in, and 5 and 3 being the least against the Bruins in the 3-1 loss. This is a team that is not playing well offensively. They're not playing well defensively either, and they're not. They don't look good. Even in the game against the Canadiens, okay, they were up 3-1 in that hockey game, and I know we're gonna bring up Canadiens because it ends up being a situation that at the end of the day, no matter what, like we're Habs fans, so we're gonna talk about the Habs more than anything else. But even in that game, okay, they were up 3-1. They were up 3-1 against the Montreal Canadiens in the second period of that hockey game, and they ended up blowing it and lost 7-4. This is a team that seems to be playing with no confidence right now. They've got players in the lineup that aren't performing. They've got a guy in Jordan Kyrou who they're going to be paying $8 million as of next season, $8.1 million as of next season. Ryan O'Reilly, who's underperforming, and Vlad Tarasenko, who I know he said early on in the year that he wanted to stay in St. Louis, but I'd be very surprised if he stayed in St. Louis after this. I mean, he's a free agent, I think, at the end of the season. So this is a guy that, might get moved at the deadline. And Ryan O'Reilly as well is a guy that's, likely being moved as well. These guys are two guys that are UFAs at the end of the year. Does St. Louis start taking calls on both Vladimir Tarasenko and Ryan O'Reilly? And do they start this process of potentially going on a rebuild? Because they're going to have some serious situations. They've already paid Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou $8.125 million each. That's your core going forward. But are they in a position right now to just pile it all in and say, you know what, we're going to trade Tarasenko, we're going to trade Ryan O'Reilly, and we're going to start picking up assets? Because
the answer to that question is not right now. It's too premature. And looking at Tarasenko's numbers last year, he had a crazy bounce back season. 82 points in 75 games, 34 goals and 48 assists. He was dealing with injuries before that. Only had 14 points in 2020, 2021, in 2019, 2020 had 10. So he was struggling. And they exposed him, at the expansion draft, hoping that Seattle was going to take him. That didn't happen. And he went off last year. So, now teams are probably calling, saying like, yes, I want Tarasenko. Tarasenko currently has 9 points in 11 games. He's top 3 or top 4 in terms of stats on the St. Louis Blues currently. So, and he's UFA now, right? So obviously you could take on that contract. You could take on that player. And, his value has increased. He's playing at the caliber that he's supposed to be playing at. So a team that does need secondary scoring or maybe even primary scoring, I think that would be awesome. I don't know if you have any teams in mind when thinking about that.
I think always the usual suspects. The Islanders are a team that I think could always be looked at. They were interested in Tarasenko before. A team that I think is underrated that may look for potentially some scoring. And I know that they're having a really good start to the year. But if they can add someone like Tarasenko, it would be great. A team like New Jersey could be a possibility as well.
Can I also throw in Seattle?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, Seattle. I mean, they're having a great start to the season as well. And, Burakovsky and Bjorkstrand, two, additions and huge additions this offseason that are really having a major impact on this team. What if Tarasenko finally goes to Seattle, but this time not through expansion, but an actual trade, which, that would be very interesting. They're currently second in the Pacific. They're at a record of 8-4-2 in 14 games. So, I mean, they could always, that would be a welcome addition too. So, or maybe even the Edmonton Oilers that are missing Vander Kane for 3 to 4 months. If they really can't solve the problem internally, that's an option. The Minnesota Wild, who lost Kevin Fiala, maybe that could be an option. Obviously,
I don't think they have the cap space to do.
Well, yeah, they're gonna have to move some cap space. But I mean, if a team really, really needs, that type of caliber of player, yes, he is UFA. St. Louis may have to retain some salary. There might have to be contracts going the other way for a team. But you never know. It could work out.
You want to know who would who would be tied for second in scoring on the St. Louis Blues in terms of goals? Well, with 3 other players, Mike Hoffman.
Wow.
So, and funnily enough, he used to play for St. Louis. So
he got scratched a couple of times by them too.
Does St. Louis go back and potentially take Mike Hoffman for to help their goal scoring? No, I'm joking. But all jokes aside, like This is a team that needs goals. Like if they're gonna want to win games, they've got a perfect opportunity tonight against San Jose, a team that's probably just as bad as them, to score some goals. Right? They need to find a way to win. If they lose to San Jose tonight, they're going to be 3-9. But one other thing that I wanted to bring up, and I wanted to bring this up, and I was thinking about this before. The last time the St. Louis Blues started off the season really badly, they had a situation where in 2019, before they won the Stanley Cup, they were the worst team in the NHL. That year, they fired their head coach. They brought in Craig Berube. They won the Stanley Cup. I'm not saying it's going to happen again this year. That's not what I'm saying. But, and I don't think they're going to fire Craig Berube right now. But this is a conversation that maybe if history repeats itself again, St. Louis may fire their coach, bring somebody else in, and a guy that we talked about before that could be another potential interesting candidate for another team. Rick Tocchet could be an opportunity to potentially come in and
He's been linked to the Vancouver Canucks as well. So
that's
we'll see
it.
what
And
happens
you
there.
know who else? Who I know he's not wanting to coach right now, but he's available if a team decides to fire their coach. St. Louis, for example, could be Barry Trotz as well. So there's an option for St. Louis to. I'm not saying fire their coach. I don't think they will, but it's something that I think in the back of Doug Armstrong's mind, he must be thinking, listen, if we're not going to make the playoffs this year, we need to get a coach that's going to come in and help us. And what's the next step here? Because I think right now is they're going to look at the next 15 games that they're going to play. If in the next 15 games they haven't improved, they're one of the worst teams in the NHL, I would not be surprised if we see links to Tarasenko being moved, guys like Barbashev being moved, guys like O'Reilly being moved, because at the end of the day, these guys are all unrestricted free agents. And let's be honest, Tarasenko is probably getting a first-round pick for Ryan O'Reilly. I know he's only got 2 goals, but he's still an elite centerman. I think you maybe get a first-round pick for him too.
Well, look, like you're saying, like you were saying before, like New Jersey. Why would New Jersey be an option? Well, Palat's gone for God knows how long. He just had surgery not so long ago. Philly was linked to Tarasenko at one point, so that could be an option. The Capitals, who are not going to have Connor Brown for the rest of the season, most likely. Yes, they will have Tom Wilson, but they're struggling in the standings right now, and they have some cap space because of Carl Hagelin on LTIR, Nicholas Backstrom. So maybe they could look to add in Tarasenko, who is a Russian, and they have Russians on the team. Orlov, Kuznetsov.
Maybe they even add Barbashev too.
Ovechkin.
They could add Barbashev as well.
Yeah, Barbashev as well. So those are like things to look at in terms of Colorado. They have a lot of injuries right now too, and there's been links that Ryan O'Reilly might go back to the Colorado Avalanche. We've seen some reports here and there. I don't know who else could really trade for a guy like O'Reilly who really needs a center.
I think no matter where you go, like if you're Ryan O'Reilly, I think that's probably more of a deadline acquisition where a team maybe bolsters their thing. But Tarasenko for me, I think is the big one because Tarasenko asked for a trade, right? And there was a lot of talk about him potentially getting traded originally. Then he rescinded it. He's like, I don't want to get traded anymore. But I think that right now, the most likely scenario is that if they do make a trade, it's Tarasenko. That's my honest belief. And there's a lot of teams that would be interested in Tarasenko. And I know that no matter what, it just is a situation where you got to kind of just do your due diligence and see which team is the best fit. But I don't think St. Louis is ready to start, tearing it all down. But I would not be surprised if in 15 games from now, we get to the 25 game mark, let's say, they decide, you know what, listen, Connor Bedard's available. Why don't we just, pack it in for the year?
They have a core, right? They're already, building around for the future.
And Promise, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you could even throw in Buchnevich as well, right? So, so obviously guys like Michkov, Fantilli, Bedard, the list goes on. This is a deep draft, right? So you could add another additional piece.
That's right. So if St. Louis, you're not panicking.
Yeah, like right now, they're a team that has a good, mix of youth and also veteran presence. And that's why, we would assume, this is going to be a team that's going to be competitive for a long time, right? And right now, it looks like they're struggling. And it looks like they're going to have to prioritize the youth movement and start, shedding some of those veterans off the team and get some, picks or prospects in return.
I have a question for you, okay? And I want your honest opinion on this because I think this was a debate that has happened for a long time. Do
Yeah.
you think that Jordan Binnington is overrated?
I think I had him and Carter Hart at the same level in terms of like start off very very hot and then like fell off due to like various reasons, and I'm like, you know what, maybe they're both overrated. I do believe that Carter Hart is a better goalie, and we see that he just needed a better coach and
But
better direction, right?
I
Bennington, I think it was just in the moment he was hot, and now yeah, he's struggled. He's definitely struggled. I don't wanna say
I
he's a bad goalie. I just think he's overrated. I think he's just an average starter.
That's it. And I think like look, like last year in the regular season, he struggled too. Came in the playoffs, had a 949, was fantastic. But he's it looks to me like we're seeing the downfall of Jordan Binnington. And I know people are gonna look at this and say, oh, the downfall. But like look, Jordan Binnington, the year that the Blues won the cup, was their best player. He was fantastic. He was MVP. It was all about him. But ever since then, he's been average, at best average. And this season, he's been horrible. Yes, the team hasn't scored goals in front of him either, sure. But when your last, I think, 6 losses have been 6 goals, 7 goals, 5 goals, 5 goals, 3 goals, 5 goals. Yes, there's some situations where your team is not scoring, but there's also some situations where your team is not able to win games because your goaltending is letting too much goals in. So that's kind of my opinion on
Yeah,
it.
and look, I think me and Luca both agree that, for the moment, nothing will happen. But if this losing streak does continue, or even if they do win against San Jose and they win like maybe the next two games, but they start losing again and they're still at the a bottom tier team and bottom of the standings, I do believe, Tarasenko was the first one out because of his
Yeah.
past, right? Because of the trade request and all that stuff. So, um, we'll see what happens, but we'd like to hear from the St. Louis Blue fans. What are your thoughts? Do you think that they pull a 2019 and they start off really horribly and then they basically explode, go on this run and possibly, maybe win a Stanley Cup? Well, we'll see what if that happens. But or do you think, this is it now? The old guys, it's time to get rid of them and stuff. So let's see here. You see the team in front of him, dude gets about 20 high dangerous chances against exaggeration, but close. Yeah,
Yes, but like even at that, okay. And I'm gonna go back to the Canadians game because that was the most time that I saw the Habs. That was the time that I saw the Blues play because obviously they played the Habs. I'll be honest. I think out of the 7 goals that Binnington let in, he could have had 3 of them.
yeah,
Realistically, he could have had 3 of them. I think Dvorak's 2 goals, he should have had both. Realistically, and there was I think 1 goal that he absolutely should have had. I think it was the first goal. Was it Caulfield's goal? I think maybe.
yeah.
But yeah, so that's the only game I've really seen. But besides that, even in terms in general, from other perspectives and just watching highlights and reading up on other Blues fans, I've seen that. Listen, like, look, I know people are high on Binnington, but from a lot of people, I've seen a lot of complaints, and he's let in a lot of weak goals in his career too. So I would agree with you that yeah, okay, you see the team in front of him, true, but also it's a little bit on him as well. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, so that concludes today's episode, guys. We'd like to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. St. Louis fans, what would you expect this team to do moving forward? Who do you want to see traded? Who do you want to see in return, possibly in a trade package, for example? Do you guys want to go for a rebuild? Retool? We'd like to hear your thoughts, guys. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and if you like Bet99, fantasy hockey, football, casino games. The link is in the description below. So you guys can use that using our Young Guns code, which is Young Guns1 to play. And you must be 19 years old enough to play responsibly. And the Mind Foundation. You guys want to donate to them? The link is in our description below. With that being said, guys, see you on the next episode of the Young Guns podcast. And thank you once again for tuning in.